But first, I'm going to say hi to Jeff in Chicago. Jeff, thanks for checking in, and hello, everyone. Folks, you have reached today's L10 webinar, Building the Dynamic Sales Team of the Future, sponsored by CMR Institute. My name is Tim Sosby. I'm editorial director for L10. It's my pleasure to welcome you today and to serve as a host of our webinar. I'm going to start here with some housekeeping items. We are planning a 60-minute session for you today. You'll notice that your phones are on mute, so any questions you have, please do type them in using the questions feature there on the control panel on the right side of your screen. We are planning a panel discussion. Your questions are encouraged, so please do let us hear from you throughout today's webinar. And just type them in, hit the submit button, and we will receive the questions and get to them as we can, or take them offline as needed. I also wanted to point out the Handouts window. There are several items in the Handouts window you may wish to download. Some items around your L10 membership that might be helpful for those of you who are L10 members or interested in L10. We have our L10 calendar of events or certificate programs for 2021. Some information on our new e-learning module, e-learning lounge module on inclusive learning, and finally the L10 onboarding map. You can download any or all of these. Just highlight the title. It'll walk you through downloading to your desktop, and I can always provide you a copy of anything offline. If you have any questions or have any issues downloading, you can always reach out to me at the email here, and I'll be happy to provide you anything offline as well. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available on demand in the L10 Self-Directed Learning Library. We're going to share an address with you for that email, for that recording that library about an hour after today's webinar ends in a follow-up email. It'll also be available even sooner than that email gets to you on the website. So you can certainly look for it through the website, through that email, through our app, however you need to connect to the information after today's webinar and share with your colleagues as you'd like. And speaking of sharing, as you leave today's webinar, a follow-up survey is going to appear on a separate browser window. Please do take a moment, look for that survey, and share your thoughts with us as you leave today's webinar. We produce these programs for you, so your feedback is always appreciated. And again, along those lines, there's my email address. If I can help with anything, certainly don't hesitate to reach out. All right, with all that said, I'm going to turn things over to our speakers now. I'm going to ask you to bear with me real quickly. We're going to change screens here, so you're going to see your screen change as we change presenters. That's going to happen right now. And I'm going to turn things over to Michelle O'Connor. Michelle's going to be our moderator today. Michelle's a member of the L10 Board of Directors, and she's also the president and CEO of CMR Institute. Michelle, thanks for joining us today.
Tim, thank you so much. We're all very happy to be here today, and I'm really excited to have this esteemed panel with us today. So we want to jump right in, and I'll make some introductions, and we'll get started. So I'll start with Laura Last, who's Global Director, Learning and Performance at Amgen. Laura has more than 29 years of experience in healthcare and pharmaceuticals. She joined Amgen in 2006 and has held multiple roles of increasing responsibility. Laura became Director of Global Learning and Development, Learning and Performance, Laura, in 2016. And Laura has a passion for both training and for improving performance. And Laura started her career as a registered dietitian, and prior to joining Amgen, she had a successful career with Novartis and Sanofi Aventis in sales, training, and sales management. She holds a BS in dietetics from Kansas State University and an MA and an MBA from Webster University. Welcome, Laura. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Michelle. So glad to be here.
Alicia Talish. Alicia is Director of Worldwide Training at Bristol Myers Squibb, and Alicia has 27+ year background in biopharmaceuticals, including +11 years at BMS in a diverse range of L&D roles, including cardiovascular sales training, the U.S. leadership development, and worldwide leadership development. In her current role, Alicia is responsible for global selling skills initiatives and learning solutions, first and second line field leader development, capability ownership of the global coaching platform, and trainer onboarding and development. Her experience includes global launch initiatives, developing selling skills proficiency definitions, sales model development, and leadership development for worldwide customer capabilities for both the U.S. and the international markets. Alicia's background also includes various field sales, sales leaderships, and L&D roles at GlaxoSmithKline and Savage Labs. Welcome, Alicia.
Thanks so much for having me, Michelle. Happy to be here.
Last but certainly not least, we have Wayne Rogers. Wayne is Field Excellence Associate Director at AstraZeneca. And in his current role, Wayne serves as the lead for learning experiences around selling in the US, which include hybrid selling techniques. After 25 years of sales and sales leadership roles across multiple markets and multiple size companies, he now shapes the future skills needed to impact sales and sales results in a rapidly changing healthcare environment. Wayne is also host of the highly reviewed internal podcast, Elevate to Accelerate. Welcome, Wayne.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Okay. Well, so glad to have everyone here. So as we get started, I just wanted to remind everyone, as you registered for the webinar, you should have received a Sales Team of the Future blueprint. So if you look for the little virtual roundtable icon, whenever you see that, that's your trigger to engage with the workbook in any manner that you choose. So we'll move right along. Okay, so we sent out a survey prior to today's webinar, and we asked participants, what future knowledge and skills do you think are most important? And so you'll see in the word cloud the responses, with obviously the most common ones being the biggest. But I know we're going to hit on a lot of these today. But any comments from the panel on any of the skills that you see here?
I think they just resonate with me for sure. And I think in the conversations I've had with Alicia and Wayne, I think it's true with them as well that, we spoke about all of these and how important they've become as we've gone through the last year and moving into this year and looking to the future.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, well, let's move right along. So I have a question for you all. We all have had skills that we've developed and honed throughout our career, whether we came by them a little bit naturally or had to work at them. Can each of you tell me one future skill that you use daily, and why is it important to your success? Okay, I'll start with you, Laura.
Absolutely. So, I think that there are so many on that list, on that word cloud, that I think we've all had to really develop and embrace over the last year. As we talked about these as a group, I think there are several that we've all been just, that really resonate with us. But a couple of the ones that, I really thought about as maybe being a little bit unique, that I know I have developed as well as my team has developed. And that's really kind of both ends of the spectrum here of critical thinking skills, being able to, adapt quickly, think about what we need to do differently and move forward quickly. And then also on the other side of that, the creativity and innovation side, that things were very different over the last year. So we had to get creative about it too, right? How are we going to attack this? And what are we going to do differently? Really thinking outside the box. And I think those are things that, again, kind of both ends of the spectrum, but I think we're going to have to continue to focus on those skills as we move forward and we think about not only ourselves as trainers, but obviously our topic today, building our sales teams. They have to be good at that as well.
Absolutely. Alicia, Wayne, one of you?
Yeah, I can jump in. So thanks, Laura. Thanks, Michelle. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining. Before I answer the question, I did want to mention, for those that may not have seen the lineup change, some of you might have been joining hoping to hear from Candace Lankowski, our Vice President of Worldwide Training and Talent Development. Clearly, I am not her. Candace is actually on vacation this week, probably on a ski slope somewhere as we speak here, and she had asked me to fill in for her so that she would not be stepping away from her family to work during her vacation, and I think modeling for all of us that we can and should do that as well. So I realize I've got big shoes to fill, and I'll do my best, but I just wanted to address that in case anybody had joined and was expecting to see Candace and wondering where she was. So to answer the question, and I agree, that word cloud, I think we could take that to any organization and you would see those same skills popping up, right, as the most prevalent. And I would say that I try, and I have been trying, be the operative word to use daily. Certainly not perfected, something I'm always working on, and that is empathy. And I think as leaders, our number one focus is and should be our people, right? And I think especially in this environment, everyone saw how important having empathy is and that focus on your people. And more than that, I think just how hard it is to make sure that you're leveraging and that you're being empathetic in a virtual environment, you know, to pause, think, pay attention. When you're back to back to back in virtual meetings all day, jumping from one thing to the next, it's so easy to move too fast. And so it's something that I try to intentionally have a heightened awareness around and alert and remind myself to stop and think when I get on with my folks and ask them how they're doing, listening to what they say and what they don't say, and then asking, you know, follow-up questions with that, given, you know, and giving the conversation the time it deserves. And what I mean by that is if I've got a one-on-one scheduled and I ask, how are you doing? And that conversation ends up taking the entire time, that's okay, because that's what people need right now. And everyone needs it to a different extent. So definitely empathy, I work on every day, try to get better and better.
You know, both of those are amazing words. And I think back to that word cloud right in the middle was what they all led to, which is being better at our virtual capabilities. But for me personally, it was the word resilience. And, you know, getting told no a lot and that won't work here and that won't work here. We had to go back, innovate, and figure out a new way to come back, but not just come back, but come back stronger. And to me, that's the essence of being resilient. And then to keep it as a strength and understand that it is a muscle that needs exercise and we need to keep it in shape every day. And remember, you know, we may get at times below the line, but we can come back and get above the line, and resilience is what's going to get us there. That's the word for me for sure.
Right. Thank you. I think a lot of people can relate to what each of you just said over the last year. So we've been virtual now for about a year. So I'd like to hear what surprised you most about the last year. And Wayne, maybe we could start with you this time.
Yeah, well, the first thing that I say would be very surprising was the length. I think most of us thought, like similar potential pandemics, that maybe it would quickly stall and we'd be, quote, back to normal. And that kind of came a phrase that we heard, well, we'll get back to normal soon, but we realized that's not going to be soon. In fact, the old normal's gone. Then the next part of that was just the global impact that it had. Whereas before, maybe it affected this part of the country or this part of the globe, this was pretty well universal in how it affected the whole globe. So it required our entire company to really look at it differently. And that was when we needed that speed, agility, and resilience to really approach it. But it really identified how ingrained we were in a single channel approach, really how reliant we were on face-to-face. And our first step was to really get better at multi-channel, making sure that we could use all the channels that we currently had. But like I think most companies now, our vision is to move toward omni-channel. But that was what I observed.
Thank you. Laura?
For me, really, I think what surprised me the most was just how quickly everyone adapted and really stepped up. I know not only for the training team, but again, for our sales teams, there was new technology that we had to start using and get very proficient at. You know, again, like Wayne said, reps were calling on their customers differently, and you could see just how quickly the successful ones really wanted to change and do things differently. And it was pretty amazing. I think, you know, for the training team, I know we decided that we were not going to bring in a new hire training class to Thousand Oaks on a Saturday, and they were scheduled to come in on Monday. And by that Thursday, the entire team had revamped the curriculum to be virtually, you know, efficient and acceptable, and that everybody would still be learning from that curriculum, completely adapted and started class right away. I mean, it's pretty amazing to think within 4 days they made that adaptation and never looked back. You know, of course, then all the rest of the teams did the same thing. And so that really surprised me. I think the other thing that surprised me was that, you know, we all had our own unique experience. So everyone, adapted quickly and did what they needed to do. But behind the scenes, we were all having different experiences being virtual. And so to Alicia's point earlier about empathy, you really had to think about what each individual was experiencing. If they had, little kids that they were trying to wrangle, or, small children in school, or maybe they were a caregiver for a parent or something that was at home. There were just a lot of different experiences. And, in spite of that, I felt like people really were very positive in trying to see, any silver lining in the situation, like in being able to be home and enjoy time with a newborn or their children, those types of things. So, it was very unique to me, and just how different everyone's experience was and how they reacted to it.
That's a great point. Alicia, how about you?
Yeah, and I would say I could have been using Wayne's words and Laura's words as well. It's interesting and fascinating, the similarities, but also knowing everybody was going through this differently. And just like Wayne, I was actually talking to somebody this morning, and we were, thinking back and realizing how long we've been here, and remembering leaving the office exactly a year ago this very week, and thinking we'd all see each other in a couple of weeks. So see you in a couple of weeks. So, definitely can, relate to that one. I would say not necessarily surprising, but so impressive to me, and it ties to my prior answer. And that's that I was really encouraged that this pandemic brought empathy front and center in how we treat each other within the company, communities, teams. And we came together and supported one another, and are doing it even more so now. We're getting better and better at it, encouraging everybody to put their health and wellness first, and still delivering on all the business objectives, including, for us, is integrating 2 companies, a variety of launches through not only a pandemic, but a social crisis on top of that. So I would chalk that to the surprising category, if you will, but to the pleasantly surprised bucket.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, so obviously many new skills needed to be developed very, very quickly. So what did you focus on first, and why? And Alicia, can we start with you this time?
Absolutely. I think for us, we quickly realized that, first of all, we had to try and help our trainers to maximize productivity, manage their workload, prioritize wellness, so they could sustain, whatever energy they needed to carry on. And we still have work to do there, so I'm not going to lie. And as we just spoke about, we're going on a year now, a year of nonstop asks for the training team. For our sales teams, we tackled quick wins first, which for us, that was taking our selling skills curriculum and then adjusting it, to support selling in a virtual environment versus the face-to-face. And I think in focusing on reframing our selling skills in the context of virtual interactions, when we looked at what we had in the curriculum, we had the what in place. And the what didn't really change. It was how it looked different in a virtual setting and how it should be applied. So I think in focusing our efforts there, that did allow us to, bring value and meet needs pretty quickly. I believe, if I have the count right, we released about 12 learning solutions between April and August for the markets to pick up and leverage at whatever time made sense for them, right? Based on their local market needs, competing priorities. And I think for us, that was the fastest way, again, to bring value to the teams and meet some of those immediate needs. Because, of course, like everybody else, everybody was turning to training to fulfill all that time at home now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add to that is just the logistics and the how to use a screen-to-screen platform. This was new to our field, and so they needed to be the basic tools of how to set up and then manage a screen-to-screen platform for their calls. And that brought up, okay, wait a minute, if we're going to do that, we need updated compliance standards to make sure that we avoid risk over making calls over that platform. But then once we got to there, then we saw that we needed just basic skills like on-screen appearance and camera placement, lighting, background, and even dealing now with Wi-Fi strength, the dreaded, hey, you're breaking up. We wouldn't want that experience for our customers. But overnight, what we saw is we went from voice being our primary distance communication to video. and we had to kind of nudge people there to get them, okay, turn your cameras on, let's go. You know, this is going to be a camera on function to get them comfortable so that they would be comfortable in front of their customers. But we also noticed if we don't get this right now, there could almost be a honeymoon period at first with our customers. So they're going to give us some leeway, but we can't just rely on that. We've got to get this channel right so that we don't end up burning this down the road, and that the customers don't have a good experience over a virtual or screen-to-screen experience.
And I will just add, I agree very much with what Alicia and Wayne both said, but one of the things we focused on first with the field that I was very proud of the team for is that we developed 3 emotional intelligence modules for the field. And Alicia's spoken quite a bit about empathy, and it was one of the big things that we focused on as well. And those 3 modules were literally hand developed and focused to the field on how to focus with their customers, and kind of stepping away from the sales numbers at that moment and really how can we help you during this, because obviously our customers were dealing with exactly what we were, right? So a whole new way of working and a way of engaging with their customers and patients. And so those modules, we actually use kind of a train the trainer model, and our field trainers trained the district managers, and the district managers then led through those modules with the teams, and we got just amazing feedback about it. And I think it really changed the foundation of how our sales teams moved forward as they engaged in, throughout the entire year of last year and even in, today. Along with that, obviously, we focused on tech skills as well, like Wayne mentioned, and the presentation skills, that type of thing. But, truly, I feel like those emotional intelligence modules were really the launch pad to the success of the field moving forward.
Okay. Sounds like a lot of focus on building goodwill with customers at a really difficult time. So very important. Okay, so I think next we want to hear from our audience members in terms of what percentage of your sales force will remain virtual for the foreseeable future. Tim, can you help us with that poll?
Thanks, Michelle, I can. Folks, we're going to take this poll using the Poll Everywhere tool. So I'm going to ask you to vote in one of 2 ways. You can either way will register your vote. You can go to use a browser on your laptop, desktop, smartphone, tablet, what have you, and go to pollev.com/CMRI745. You see the address at the top of the screen there, pollev.com/CMRI745, and just select one of the choices. Or you can use your text feature on your phone and text 22333 to CMRI 745, and then select A, B, C, or D as ever your choice, however it is. Looks like your votes are coming in right now, Michelle.
There's more than 75. Lots of people voting. Okay. All right, looks like most people have entered their results. So 50 to 75, well, a few more coming in.
People changing their minds too.
Maybe. Although I do think it only lets you answer once. I'm not sure though, but yeah.
We had some A answers, now we don't have any, so somebody changed their mind.
Yeah. So it looks like most people are falling into that 50 to 75% range. How does that feel to you guys? Does that feel about right in terms of what you're seeing in your organizations?
Yeah, I would say not surprising to me. I think for me, the question might have been what percentage of your sales or what percentage of your sales force engagements would remain virtual versus what percentage of your sales force. Because I think that most of us are really looking at that hybrid model moving forward.
I think that's such an excellent point, and also remembering that customer preference falls into this too, in that we're now seeing more and more customers actually say that they would prefer different channels other than only face-to-face, that they're now looking at other digital channels as a preference.
Such a great point, Wayne.
Absolutely. Okay, well, interesting results. All right, so let's move on to the next question. So virtual selling's been a top priority for most organizations, not just the pharmaceutical industry. So talk to us a little bit about, do you think that it's here to stay? And if so, how is that going to impact your training initiatives and your priorities for 2021 and beyond? And Laura, can we start with you this time?
Sure. I think Wayne said it very well. I mean, I think that virtual selling is here to stay, and not just because of our priorities, but because of our customers' preferences as well. And it's definitely impacting our training priorities. Where we really have a whole curriculum planned out for the entire year, both for our sales representatives as well as our district managers, and how to coach to this. And we're really looking at it as a strategic customer engagement curriculum, because we really are teaching our representatives that there are many different ways to engage with the customers. And of course, our brand teams are coming out with many different types of tools to allow them to do that. But that's a new mindset for a lot of representatives, that, you know, before it was, well, I'm going to jump in the car and drive over there, and I may or may not have pre-call planned. And now there's a lot more planning that goes into virtual engagement, and the DMs need to know how to coach to that. So it really is a strategic engagement plan that they have to think kind of, you know, before the engagement, during the engagement, and even after the engagement, kind of preparing for the next one. What tools do I have in the omni-channel you know, tool belt, if you will, and how am I going to use those to meet my customers' preferences, but also to achieve what I need to. So, you know, I think Alicia said it earlier. It's not that they're really doing anything differently per se in selling. You know, you're still meeting your customers' needs, finding out what those are, but you've just got different ways to think about it, and different tools to use. And you know, and I think the other piece that falls in here too is that we continue to train that emotional intelligence as well, and asking those questions, and being in tune with your customer. And again, nothing too drastically different, but I think we're just have a heightened awareness to those needs.
Absolutely, Laura. I think also, if we look at our customers too, many HCPs that were reluctant to move to telemedicine for a lot of reasons, but they quickly pivoted, and now they're there, and they're kind of, oh, this isn't so bad. We're even here with practices like, I'm not even going to have a practice in an office anymore. I'm going to work out of the office of my home. So they've quickly adapted, as we do need to adapt with that. And whether it's our data or external data, all the data supports that this is here to stay. Now, to keep it here, I feel like that as an industry, we need to protect it by training to very high standards and make sure that we continue to create a positive selling experience. You know, it's hard to admit it, but if you go back to some of the data before COVID, if you see the change from 2018 to 2019, the AMA actually reported that we saw a 13 percentage point drop in physicians saying that they didn't want to see reps in person anymore. So we knew that that channel was already slowly kind of contracting a little bit. We've known that over time. Here we've got this new opportunity to almost start afresh, and I think that we owe it to the industry to make sure that we preserve it and make sure that we bring value to it.
Yeah, and I like Laura and Wayne, I too do think it's here to stay. And last summer, you know, as we were starting to bury down into this, we did complete a diagnostic at what that future state might look like, right? And we saw even distribution, you know, in terms of the future of the categorizations for customer engagement, right? Face-to-face, virtual, blended. And we recognize that there's going to be a high level of variability too, because it's going to vary across therapeutic areas, business units, the US states, international. My team has international markets, so it's very different from market to market as well. So we do know we've got to adapt our approach, and it has meant defining, you know, some new capabilities that will apply to a broader learner population. And in terms of priorities for this year, our first three from the selling skills standpoint specifically that we're focusing on are that digital proficiency. Wayne mentioned that earlier. And then also hybrid remote engagement and executive presence are like the top three. But again, still all those other things there too, like empathy and EQ. I also think the answer to this question goes beyond just virtual selling, just like Laura and Wayne said. You know, we're going to see that new customer interaction model emerging that leverages that full omni-channel, seamless, innovative ways to interact with customers, ways to provide a unified experience across our companies. So I think as training organizations, we do need to stay ahead of those trends and prepare our teams to be able to respond and flex, because we're going to continue to have to do that. So we are focused on building an adaptive learning strategy this year for our team, so that, you know, we'll be able to do that and stay ahead of the curve.
That's great. And it's I think a really good point that you made, Alicia, about the different therapeutic areas and different specialties and engaging differently, but also how some of those skills are really so important regardless of who you're calling on, what products you're carrying, that type of thing. I'd like to next move into your hiring model. So how has your hiring model changed during the last year? And can you talk to us a little bit about maybe the skills that an ideal hire might have, or what you might be looking for now that you weren't 2 years ago? And Laura, can we start with you this time?
Sure. You know, I have given this a lot of thought, and we've definitely, and I think there's a question talking about competencies and that type of thing as we go through this, but we've definitely looked at changing those competencies. And so as we're hiring, obviously we're trying to hire to those. But I would say that you know, we're obviously looking for people that have been able to be adaptable and flexible and still successful in this environment. But as far as, you know, the typical profile that we would look for, it's fairly similar to what it was before, because again, everybody that's in this industry has had to adapt and be different over the last year and adapt their skills. So what we look for in the questioning is a lot more around how did you do that, and, you know, were you successful, and those types of questions to really give those specific examples. You know, we did have quite a few people that were very frustrated at the beginning of this because they either as a rep couldn't engage their customers the way that they were used to. They maybe didn't adapt to the technology as they had needed to be successful. We had district managers that were very frustrated, and how do I coach my reps if I can't be out there with them? And so we're kind of looking for those people that overcame all that and were able to be successful and have those skills and characteristics that we've talked about that have made people successful throughout this. But as far as, you know, people that are successful salespeople, you know, the good ones figured it out, and they can do it whether they're live and in person with someone or on a video, or, you know, many people opted to use the phone or email or text or whatever they could compliantly do, and they figured it out. So it really is around where I spoke to earlier, that creative and innovative thinking, but also that critical thinking. Those are all just very important skills for them to have.
I think for us, so similar to Laura, for trainers in terms of skills and hiring, you know, digitally skilled is going to be a must. And then, of course, as we've heard, the flexibility, adaptability, resilience, you know, that was Wayne's earlier, more important than ever. And we too are rebuilding our trainer competency model and proficiency levels to, you know, account for those different skills that now require more emphasis. And then for the sales reps, some of those same skills are needed, but we are seeing hiring managers, you know, placing more emphasis on the reps with experience and established customer relationships, because it's much more difficult for a new rep to build relationships with the customers now. So I do think that's had an impact on training as well, because we've got to adapt. We have to have the training be adaptable enough for the experienced reps to benefit from it, but still to be comprehensive enough that someone with less experience is going to be able to build their proficiency.
Alicia, I love that point about the existing relationships. That's such a great point. And before, like when we saw the shift in hospitals, and they started to close down, that's a big thing we looked for is, well, can you access this hospital and show me how you could do that? But now we're using that same question process for virtual access. I think one of the things that hasn't been added yet was just the art of a virtual interview. So we had a whole team that brought digital skills, not just to our sales specialists, but also to our leaders so that they could be better when they were on screen with their team and obviously in the interview too. And also seeing that virtual interview is a great chance to assess not just everything else we heard, but also their digital skills. How do they show up? What thought process and planning did they put into this interview? Because that will either show you what they will plan for in a sales call or they won't plan for in a sales call. And I think we saw a big pivot to more interview panels. You know, when you take away the lack of logistics that you need to travel, everyone be at the same place on the same day, and you can just carve out an hour, you can do more panels, which is good because you get diversity and points of view, but you also got to be careful because that can bring a new threat to the candidate with so many eyes on them if that's all you're doing is panel interviews. I think the one thing I say from a skill that we look for, it's as important about what new skills, but maybe reminded of what skills we just always were looking for, but they were exposed. And then I'm reminded of the saying of goes something like this, you know, it's easy to steer the ship when the sea is calm. Well, I don't think we thought the sea was calm, but now we knew the sea was calm before 2020, but in the rough seas of 2020, it certainly exposed these skills that are so apparent, and whether it be resiliency or growth mindset. And I love what Laura said, you know, the reps that figured it out, and what we see in those is just that competitive drive. Like, I'm just going to figure this out. I am going to make this happen, and I'm going to try again until I can make it happen. And that competitive drive that we should always be looking for, it was so apparent the reps that were excelling in this environment had it.
Oh, kind of as a segue to the next question, in terms of how the skills and competencies needed to be, you know, successful have changed over the last year. Alicia, you touched on the building relationship piece, and I'd like to learn a little bit more about that in terms of, you know, how have you been successful in helping those reps or account managers, you know, learn how to build relationships, and so, or anything else that you all want to touch on. And so Wayne, we'll start with you this time.
Yeah, well, I hate saying this number because it keeps getting higher and higher every time I say it, but it has been now 26 years that I've been in the industry, and across 5 companies, multiple disease states, several account types, and it all kind of still boils down to almost the simple strategy of the right customer with the right frequency and being able to figure out their problems and then solve them with our solutions. But if we really look at it in those simple terms, it's those skills and competencies of almost being able to plan to give valuable interactions no matter what the channel is. And it's that skill to walk in the front door and then all the way to the back door, and then maybe jump on a video call to talk to another account, make a phone call to set up an appointment, or follow up with somebody with a compliant email. But it's understanding what channels that client will use and which ones can we nudge them into, and then to make sure that we're not just doing it because we have it. Okay, I have this channel, I've got to use it, but we're using it to drive impact in an efficient way. I think that's the competencies that are going to make that rep of the future really shine and bring that increased value to our customers.
Yeah, and I agree with Wayne, and I would say, you know, one thing, I think I mentioned digital proficiency earlier, and that we're focused on that and building a curriculum there. But that includes that whole omni-channel, the role of the rep, the manager, the role they play in that ecosystem. And in the past, they didn't have to worry about that. Like Wayne said, you know, they didn't have to worry about all the digital channels because that face-to-face rep to HCP interaction was the center of the ecosystem. It's not anymore. So now and in the future, that face-to-face interaction is just one of those levers that can be pulled in a really complex and highly, you know, digital landscape now that surrounds our customers with the customer and patient at the center of that.
I would fully agree with everything that both Alicia and Wayne said. I know for us as an organization, we actually dug into our competencies and behaviors that make a successful representative and district manager, and change those accordingly to move into this year. And so, they have changed, obviously, and so we had to identify what that would be and move forward. And I really do still, I've said this a couple of times, but I do feel like it really comes down to being more strategic as well in how they engage. And Alicia and Wayne both touched on omni-channel and pulling the levers that need to be pulled at the right time with the right customer. I mean, that isn't, again, very different than we had in the past. That's what we're always trying to do, is the right message with the right customer. We just have different ways to get there now. And I think representatives and managers have to really think through that. And what does that look like? And I know we've always tried to encourage them to, plan more long-term and not just for this interaction jumping out of the car today. But I think because of the way we're having to engage to move forward, that strategic thinking skill is, we really have to build that muscle. And I think that's coming out loud and clear.
Next, we want to hear from the audience again. So Tim, can we move on to that? We want to understand what future knowledge and skills does your sales team need to develop the most?
Thank you, Michelle. And folks, once again, you can use the poll everywhere tool for this. There's the instructions at the top of the screen here where you can use pollev.com/CMRI745 to type in your responses, or you can text 22333 to CMRI 745. And again, text in your responses and you'll see the word cloud here coming up on the screen. There we go. Words are coming in now.
Wow, lots of skills as they continue to come in.
How fun to see all of these different things.
It is. It is. The digital presence, customer, virtual, critical thinking. It looks like those are high.
I love
Balance.
how this is showing the customer right there front and center, and it just keeps becoming more prominent.
Okay.
I think that word thinking stands out for me too. Like, just think, just what would be the best thing to do right now?
Yeah, those are great. All really wonderful skills and knowledge for now and for the future, I think. So thank you to the audience. And then we'll move on, Tim, to the next question. So I'd like to understand, we all know training's been mostly virtual. Oh, excuse me, I'm one ahead here. Talk to us a little bit about the types of training that you're prioritizing for 2021. And Laura, can we start with you?
Sure. I think there's so many different things that we could be prioritizing. I will say for my group, obviously, we've talked a little bit about some of the emotional intelligence, the critical thinking, strategic engagement, that type of thing. But we are also really focused on leadership training and coaching right now, because it's something that, again, it's not new. We know that leadership and coaching is so critical to the success of our sales teams, but I think as we look to the future, it's even more critical. Our coaches really have to know how to elevate someone's performance and their development, and to be able to do that without necessarily being able to see them on a regular basis, live, sitting in a Panera or whatever, to have those discussions. And so we're really focused there on really elevating our coaching culture and providing the tools and resources to be able to enable our leaders to be the most effective they can be.
The only thing
Michelle,
I
how
would
about
add
you?
to that, we rolled out so much stuff last year, and it felt like it was all new because we had to, because we were moving to this new platform and this screen-to-screen calls and this and that. Is this year we're kind of just taking a little different approach. Yes, we have some new stuff, but most of it is ensuring that everything we rolled out last year is embedded and they understand the skills and it's turned into a behavior and they can move up the skill map with it and become better and better at it. That's our main focus this year. Yes, we're going to have some new stuff that comes out, but really it's just about embedding all those new basics now to make sure that we have them down pat.
Yeah, for us, I think I touched on, 3 of our priorities for 2021 in terms of the skills, and it was that virtual executive presence, digital proficiency, and the remote hybrid engagement. But similar to what Laura was saying, we're, having a much more heavier focus on remote coaching as well, especially as our reps start to go back to the field and the managers aren't going to be with them, which is different than both sitting at home. So that's a whole nother parameter. I will say, though, it's similar to Wayne as well. Everything we've done before, our product, disease state training, access, business acumen, all of those things are still a foundation of any of the curriculums. So that's our focus.
Okay, so I wanted to ask, training has been mostly virtual over the last year. So what good has come from that, if any? Alicia, maybe we could start with you this time.
Sure. I think 2 things. I think number 1, we've proven that we can train our sales teams virtually in any scenario, new hire, launch, leadership coaching. So I think that is going to let us be a lot more critical, and to use what Laura was focused on, think critically about what we do in the future and what we make face-to-face versus what can be done virtually. So I would say that's the first thing. And then I think the second thing is also having normalized the challenges of training virtual, or even, presenting virtually, that people used to get so anxious about everything going perfectly and, not having the at-home distractions and having surprise appearances by the family or the dog. And now everybody's just so much more relaxed about it. And I think that's healthy. I think that's in a healthy environment, a healthy culture. So I would say that's a good thing as well.
I think I'll start with something selfish, if that's okay first, which is, first of all, because of everything being virtual, I did not miss any of my son's football games due to travel this year. And that's important. And I think it goes back to, Alicia talking about empathy. That is important to me. And it's something that I'm happy I didn't get to miss this year or didn't have to miss this year. But secondary, I think that, now that we've been almost forced to move into this virtual space, what we now have is experience doing things in person. We have experience doing things virtually. And once we move into the future, we can figure out, okay, what is the best approach? Maybe there's some things that, look, that still needs to be done in person. And this works out great, actually even better done virtually. And it may then change the way we approach meetings or trainings, which is maybe there's some micro learnings up front and then some virtual touch points, and then we do a live interaction, and then we can follow up with it now virtually since we figured out the right way to do it. And I think the quantity of learning that was done, during 2020, what we noticed is there was some space in the sales field's time that allowed for more training to be done. And because we reduced the logistics, you're not having to travel, you're not having to spend 2-3 hours on a plane. That's training time now that you can do, and we just need to give them in different ways to do it, not just on virtual, but maybe it is bite-sized or podcast or other ways to do it. And I think that the next thing I would say is the globe has opened up. We used to think, okay, this area, this region, this time zone, but now we can think the entire globe. What can we learn from the entire globe? And I don't mean to go on and on, but one more thing, we are a global company and we have aggressive sustainability goals. And I think that we can look at ways by doing things the right way virtually, how this will reduce our carbon footprint. And if we can get this right, how that achieves, overall our company achieving their sustainability goals.
Such great points, and we've had a lot of those same good things that have come. I will also say, we had already started to look at our home study training and our live training even prior to COVID as to what did people really need to travel for to be sitting in a classroom, and were those presentations in the classroom the most effective? If it's just a didactic presentation, was that something that we could videotape and have them do at home prior? And so a couple of good things have come from that. It really, really forced us to do that even more quickly, to say, what can we prioritize here is what needs to be actually live. And we were trying to focus on that live training really to be application training, right? And so that just expedited the process of moving a lot more to self-study. And along with that, because of the pandemic, we were also able to get some funding for some different platforms and technology that we wanted to utilize to be able to do that. And probably without that, we would maybe not have gotten that funding. And so that was good. And now we've proven, to Alicia's point, that it's effective and we can do it that way. And in many ways, it's actually better. We used to get a lot of pushback about, we can't take people out of the field for training. Of course, last year all they did was training, right? But can't take people out of the field. And so now we're able to utilize those same tools and resources to say, we're not taking them out of the field. It's a self-study module that they can do anytime that they want to. And even if they're going back to offices, they could do it on their phone, sitting, in the doctor's office. So I think it's really given us a lot more flexibility and adaptability, which are some of those great words that come out of the word cloud as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great and interesting points. So talk to us a little bit about any obstacles that you encountered in virtual training and how you overcame those obstacles. Wayne, would you want to get us started?
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously you start with the basics, right? So we heard anything from Wi-Fi or internet not working or not strong enough, that sound is cutting out, video freezing, and the one I did not want to do this year, but I think I've done it more this year than last year, which is talking on mute. I promise you that's my goal this year, not to do that, but I've done it so many times myself. And then as simple as, we had this before, but we had it now, which is unfortunately just new hire equipment not showing up on time. So they weren't able to start out on the same pace as the rest of the class. And then some of the same ones are, whether you're in person or doing virtually, which is controlling those distractions. And if we're not using great virtual techniques, or maybe the session's too long, it's too easy to see that camera go off. And we know what that probably means, right? They picked up their phone, or they're starting to multitask, or they have this kind of perception still that, oh, it's just virtual. And so those are some things that we need to change. And I think also thinking about what I said globally, it's not just globally, it's across the US, looking at different time zones. There's that sweet spot that you can do something to hit the whole nation, but everybody's buying for that small little window, and that leads to competition. And so now they start to pick and choose, okay, do I do that or that? Okay, well, I'm gonna record that. Maybe I'll just listen to the recording. But we know the probability of actually going back and listening to the recording does go down, and we prefer that they attend live to join the conversations and be part of the experience. But those are some things I would bring up.
I think that's a pretty comprehensive list, Wayne. we encountered a lot of those same things, and I think how we overcame them, was really, again, that flexibility, adaptability, creativity, all the things that we've been talking about. You just kind of have to pick up and move on and learn new ways to get around those types of things.
Yeah, and I'd say ditto and ditto. And the only thing I would add is that one of the biggest obstacles that we're faced with right now is dealing with the virtual fatigue. So for both our learners and our trainers. So we are doing some work there with some subject matter experts, trying to find additional strategies to help overcome that. And hopefully we'll be able to roll those out globally soon to help in that area.
Alicia, I love that you said that because I think it's so true for all of us, more now than ever, for sure.
I'll admit, I'm virtually fatigued.
I think most people I talk to are these days.
That sounds like a t-shirt.
I think there's an
That's
ICD-9
right.
code for that now.
Well, as we emerge from the pandemic, do you think a hybrid model will become the primary model? And if so, why? And Alicia, can we start with you?
Absolutely. I think a hybrid commercial model is very likely, and I think we're going to learn as we go. We're going to watch, other companies outside of pharma experiment with some different models as well. And the reason, I think that if you just look at the generations, right? Look at Gen Z, those are going to be our healthcare professionals of the future. They engage and learn completely differently than I ever did, and they know how to use data and technology to extremes that I think our current population of HCPs today don't. So that's going to demand a different model of engagement.
I completely agree with that. I think it will be, and it is, right? It already is. I don't think it's the future necessarily. It's today. We've actually adapted our sales force at the beginning of this year to this model. We've talked a lot about omni-channel and the different resources and tools available to the sales professionals now, and so I think it's absolutely going to be the model of the future. And I love that Alicia talked about other industries as well. And I would say that many of them were probably already here even before us. I mean, we've gone out to other industries to look at how they did this and how they did it well, to try to adapt what we do today. And so I think we maybe were a little bit behind the curve, but obviously we're forced to change. And I think that this is today and the future.
100%. And I tell the story a lot in my company, which is when I started as a rep, I had no computer. I'm telling myself again, no iPad, no cell phone, no email even. And I actually had to stop several times a day to check my voicemail at a payphone. Anybody who's raising their hand remembers those days. And then I got my sales report mailed to me in like this 1 or 2 inch stack of paper every month. And that's how we operated. But we still called ourselves sales professionals. Over time, we added new tools and we added everything that we have today, but we also had to learn the skills to apply those new tools and have impact with them. I don't necessarily feel so much that, or I think we've got to be careful of calling it a model to our field, because they can get relentless and clinging to that status quo, like, well, this is how I used to do it. This is how I used to do it. And be careful of changing titles or them seeing it as a new model, and rather just kind of focus on, look, you've got some new tools. We're going to give you the skills to apply those across any channel that you're using, whether it be a face-to-face tool or a digital tool, to make sure that you use it the best way possible. Hope that helps.
Absolutely. Well, we only have a couple minutes left, but I wanted to ask each one of you very quickly, what was your proudest training achievement over the last year? Alicia?
I'm going to go a little rogue here because I've been reflecting on this over the course of the last week, and it's not a training initiative or deliverable that I'm most proud of. And as I was thinking about this, I don't know why it just dawned on me, but it just dawned on me to add to the craziness of last year. Our team had 75% turnover due to promotions. So the team we had from January to July, with the exception of one person, was entirely different than the team we had from August to December. And I have to tell you, the way each one of these individuals came into the team, into their new roles the second half of the year, their passion, their work ethic, intelligence, sense of fun amidst the chaos, I mean, they're amazing and just really special. And the way they've come together as a team in that virtual environment, you would never know that half of them have never met each other. So it's not the what that I'm proud of, it's the who.
Great.
Such a great point. Yeah, I would say the same thing. I mean, there's really two things. One is the team, obviously, and how they all just, jumped in with both feet and did what needed to happen to make sure that the quality of our training didn't change. For those of my team that are on the call, they know I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we, in the midst of all this, implemented a training or learning experience platform called Degreed. And it's not an easy thing to do anytime, let alone when you're trying to do the entire thing remotely. And you know, we'd actually discovered Degreed back in January, and unbeknownst to us, it would become really, really critical for making sure to deliver all the training that we needed to in the virtual environment, and make it way more self-directed from the learner standpoint as well. So it's really helping us achieve our learning culture. But the whole training team, you know, jumped in with both feet there as well and changed all their curriculum over to Degreed. And so I'm very, very proud of that.
Yeah, and I'll try to be quick because I know we're up against the clock here, but I think the quick answer is just all the leadership that we have in the Commercial Learning and Innovation Center here at AstraZeneca, with the speed that every department pivoted, but not just, okay, we need to put a Band-Aid on this to get through, but that we innovated how we actually bring new learning experiences that will cause impact. And one of them was we had that I was part of an AZ Global team that we worked with an amazing vendor and created a learning experience that was actually designed to do all that and bring the knowledge, the skills, the application, everything we needed to be successful across all of our channels. And the cool thing is the team that finished it first, we're now looking at their data, and they actually lead the company in increased access, increased calls per day, and the reviews are absolutely phenomenal of them saying, look, I tried it once, it didn't work, but now I had the confidence to go back and try again in a different way, in a stronger way, and it actually worked out. And so it's really cool to see that they take knowledge and turn it into action. That is awesome to see, at least for somebody in my position.
Fantastic. Well, I want to take this opportunity to thank all of our great panelists today for the insight and wisdom that you shared with us today. I think one thing for certain, building a sales force of the future is going to take a lot of work. So really appreciate the wisdom again and insight that you shared. And thank you for your time today. And Tim, I'll turn it back over to you. If there were questions and we didn't get to those, we will follow up accordingly. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Michelle, and thank you to all our speakers. I'm going to share a comment from Vicki in the audience. She said, what a great discussion and sharing of best practices. Appreciates everyone's input, and we hit a home run with this program. So thank you all for sharing on today's show, our webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to change back to my screen here, everybody, to just bear with us to close out the program today. I just wanted to share as we end today's webinar, I just wanted to make sure I tell you about the L10 Excellence Awards. The 7th Annual Excellence Awards are now open for nominations through March 24th. So please do visit L-10.org/awards. You can find out more information about the program, view our categories, view last year's and previous year's winners and whatnot. We're going to have a virtual awards ceremony on June 9th. And we certainly hope that you're part of our program this year. I also want to share with you our 2021 calendar of events as it currently stands. You can also download a copy of this, and it's always changing, so certainly keep an eye on our calendar of events on the L10 website. I mentioned one of the items in the handouts, information on our new inclusive learning module. It's the 15th learning module in the L10 e-learning lounge. Love to have you check that out. It's certainly an important lesson for these days and times, and any day and time basically. And certainly please do check out the new inclusive learning experiences module. And finally, I'm going to invite you for our next webinar, which will be this Thursday, talking about mastering hybrid selling skills. You can register for that webinar or any of these other upcoming programs or other programs not showing here at L-10.org/webinars. Here's the address for the Self-Directed Learning Library, where today's webinar recording is going to be housed. Again, we're going to send you an email about an hour or so from now. And finally, there's my email address. If I can help with anything around our webinar or your L10 membership, certainly don't hesitate to reach out. So as I close out, let me send final thank yous. I'm going to thank our speakers again today. Michelle O'Connor, Laura Last, Alicia Kalish, and Wayne Rogers. I'm going to thank our sponsors, CMR Institute, and I'm going to thank all of you for your time, attention, and participation. Let me wish you a good rest of your day, a good rest of your week, and I'll talk to you soon, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Tim. Bye, everyone. Thank you.